Good morning. Welcome to IFC. Here we are in Las Vegas. Right church, wrong pew. So I'm glad to have you here. I'd like to call the first meeting of the Interim Finance Committee to order of the 25-26 interim. And I would like to welcome everyone joining us here in Las Vegas and in Carson City. I am Marilyn Dondero Loop and I'll be chairing IFC this interim. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Assemblymember Anderson. Present. Assemblymember Backus.
Present.
Assemblymember Carter for Assemblymember Muska.
Present.
Assemblymember Dickman. Assemblymember Flanagan for Assemblymember Brown May.
Here.
Assemblymember Hafen.
Here.
Assemblymember Hibbets.
Here.
Assemblymember Howdigi.
Here.
Assemblymember Koenig.
Here.
Assemblymember O'Neill.
Here.
Assemblymember Roth for Assemblymember Watts.
Here.
Assemblymember Torres Fawcett.
Here.
Assemblymember Yeager.
Here.
Vice Chair Monroe Moreno.
Here.
Senator Buck.
Here.
Senator Canizaro.
Here.
Senator Neal.
Here.
Senator Pazina for Senator Wynn.
Present.
Senator Stone.
Here.
Senator Taylor.
Present.
Senator Titus.
Here.
Chair Dondero Loop.
And I am here. Thank you very much. And please mark Assemblymember Dickman absent excused. And I think we are all here. And I appreciate all of you who are substituting today for those who could not be here. Before we move on to today's agenda, I would like to go over the standard housekeeping items. As you know, please mute or turn off your electronic devices. And for those providing testimony today, please state your name and spell it for the record. And if you have a business card, please hand it to the secretary, committee secretary before leaving. Lastly, we will be taking a lunch break today around noon. However, the exact time will depend on where we are on the agenda. So with that, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is public comment. And this is the first period of public comment. There will be a second period at the end of the meeting. For those of you providing public comment, please call in at 888-475-4499 if you're online. And when you're prompted, the meeting ID will be 859-8045-9265, and then press pound. And then when asked for the participant ID, please just press pound. So we'll begin here in Las Vegas. Is there anyone here in Las Vegas who would like to make public comment? Please go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, Chair Dondero Loop and members of the Interim Finance Committee, Joanna Jacob, JACOB on behalf of Clark County, here just after the legislative session ended in support of items D1 and D7 on your agenda today and the related items. This is reallocation of ARPA funding to our jail-based programming in both Washoe and in Clark County. At Clark County, I think many of you who sat on Senate Finance and Assembly Ways and Means and also on the budget committees on DHHS and DPBH budgets had heard us testify about this program, very successful program in our jails that we are partnering with the state on to do pre-forensic medical care for inmates that are waiting for in the jail. Captain Martinez is here with me and has the stats on the program, but Clark County is in support of those items. Without the continued support of the state, we cannot continue this program. Very successful, and we are looking forward to partnering with the state on future funding opportunities. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Josh Martinez, representing Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. As you heard from Joanna Jacob with Clark County, the jail-based competency program has been a successful program that has been instituted within the Clark County Detention Center. We've been able to jumpstart folks that are facing competency issues to stand trial. We've been able to, on a daily average, assist 56 people. New commit are 67%, and our total vacancy usually runs around 20.3%. And we're able to not only get them on the medication that they need, but restore them to competency to be able to stand trial for the crimes that they've committed. And we have various stats, and I could submit those to the committee so you guys could review those.
Thank you very much. Any additional public comment here in Las Vegas? We'll go to Carson City. Is there any public comment in Carson City? Please go ahead when you are ready.
Good morning, Chair Dondero Loop, Vice Chair Monroe Moreno, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Cadence Matijevich, Cadenzematijevich, representing Washoe County, here to continue the public comment that you've heard, requesting your support today for items D1, 6, 7, and 8. As you heard from my counterparts from Clark County, this is a partnership that the counties have entered into with the state. These programs have been incredibly successful, and with the successful passage of Assemblymember Roth, congratulations, Assemblymember, on the passage of AB 467, we actually have an opportunity to optimize these services even further. So approval of this continued funding for this program is critical, and we would ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing anyone else in Carson City. We'll go to the phone lines. AVH, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to participate in public comment, please press *9 to take your place in the queue. There are no callers wishing to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you very much. All right, with that, we will go on to item C, we will go on to C, and we will be going to C1. And I believe Mr. Leiser will present this item.
Thank you, Chair Dondero Loop, members of the Interim Finance Committee. Excuse me. For the record, Brody Leiser with the Fiscal Analysis Division. I will walk through agenda item C1, the Statement of American Rescue Plan Act, Coronavirus State Fiscal Recovery Fund obligations and remaining unobligated balance, and summarize the request submitted for the consideration today by the committee. Excuse me. My voice has gone out, I think, since session ended.
Too much singing, Mr. Leiser. Too much singing.
You know, Madam Chair, I since I dropped that hit single in April, I've been a little worried about being a one-hit wonder. So,
well, one hit's better than none, Mr. Leiser. One hit's better than none.
So our table has been provided as a separate handout outside the meeting packets. Members should have a hard copy. It's also available on the committee meeting webpage listed under meeting material, agenda item C1. At the top of page 1 is a high-level summary displaying actual expenditures for fiscal years 22 through 24, the amounts currently authorized, inclusive of the request before the committee today, and the remaining unobligated balance. As a reminder, the state did obligate 100% of its coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds by the December 31st, 2024 deadline to do so, and any remaining funding which is yet to be spent must be expended by December 31st, 2026. We will begin to reconcile the FY 2025 actual expenditures and hope to have preliminary numbers around those added to our version of the table for reporting starting at the August IFC meeting. As a reminder, the table generally lists program descriptions and amounts in chronological order based on the budgetary approval date. Revisions or updates to existing rows, following the April IFC meeting are identified in red text and are mostly reflect savings approved at the April IFC meeting. On row 290, which is on page 25 of the table, you will see that the $5 million that was authorized for the Department of Taxation for Project Mint through the passage and approval of Senate Bill 477 has been accounted for on the table. There are 9 items before the committee today under agenda item D, 4 of which reconcile budgetary authority for previously approved projects. The remaining 5 work programs facilitate the reallocation of $7.9 million in savings to provide additional funding for 2 existing projects or programs. First, that $5 million for the Department of Taxation's Project Mint, as I previously mentioned. And secondly, there's a request before the committee today that was discussed during public comment, and this would add $2.9 million of authority to continue supporting jail-based programming for forensic clients, which the committee will hear about a little bit more later this morning. Madam Chair, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee in Las Vegas or in Carson City? Senator Canizaro. Okay, with that, I believe we do not have any questions. And so we will move on to the next agenda item, C2, and I believe Ms. Greenemeyer is here to present this item.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Vice Chair and committee members. My name is Tiffany Greenemeyer, Director for the Governor's Finance Office, and here with me is Curtis Palmer, the Deputy Director for the Governor's Finance Office. I'm here to present agenda item C2, which GFO provides a separate table of the coronavirus fiscal recovery funds. The table that has been provided as a handout, separate from the meeting packet, at the top of the page 1 is a high-level summary displaying the expenditures from fiscal year 2022, 2023, and 2024. The remaining unobligated balance is 0, with all funds currently obligated. According to this statement, if all the requests before the committee for consideration today are approved, the balance will remain at 0, with 100% of all coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds marked as obligated. The table generally lists program descriptions and amounts in chronological order based on the budgetary approval date and the items submitted for consideration by the committee today are on the last 7 rows of the document on page 26 and 27. There are 3 awards that decrease overall authority for their related projects. Item D2 is a $5 million deobligation related to row number 290 for SB 477 of the 83rd Legislative Session for Taxation's Mint project, which Brody Leiser has mentioned. Item D6 is a $2.7 million deobligation, and item D8 is a $217,000 deobligation. These 2 deobligations are requested to reallocate to increase overall authority for item D7, which is a $2.9 million increase for jail-based mental health. The other work programs on the agenda facilitate a reconciliation or alignment of budget authority with funding awards and do not increase or decrease overall authority for the related projects. The dedicated GFO ARPA team continues to work with agencies at irregular intervals to monitor progress and assist them as they spend these time-sensitive funds on projects deemed worthy to benefit our state in various capacities. So today, the total date we show that was spent is $1,746,411,653, or 64% of the total coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds spent to date, with 100% of the remaining funds shown as obligated. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions, please? Senator Canizaro? Sorry, Senator Neal.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So on page 11, it's the 52.76. You have a note where it says projected to end early and recommend deobligation. So it says that you have a net amount remaining and then a savings deobligation, but no remaining authority. It's confusing to me because in your note, it's a recommend deob. So is there going to be a remaining authority there?
Tiffany Greenmeyer, for the record. I'm going to call up Lisa Galloway to explain. Tiffany Greenmeyer, for the record. Ms. Neal, could you repeat the question?
So the question is on page 11, it's the top row, it's 52.76. There's a net amount of 100 and then a savings deob of 100. And then in the note, it says the project ended early and it recommends deobligation, but there's nothing in the column of remaining authority. So what's actually going on with this? Because the note is not a project complete. It says something different.
Good morning. Lisa Galloway, for the record. Lesagalloway. Ms. Neal, we'll have to get back with you. I think that note probably just needs updated, but I will get back with you on that.
Follow-up, Chair? So you're going to check to find out if the note is correct and whether or not you're going to then create remaining authority in that category, or you just don't recall what this actually is?
I do not recall the specific details of this. Sorry, Lisa Galloway, for the record. We will look into that and get back with you.
Okay. And then I can have another follow-up?
Yes, and I would ask, is anybody up there from Medicaid that might be able to answer or give information on that? If not, please go ahead, Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I had another question on, it's page 13, number 77. You have the net remaining amount and then the savings deob. And then in the note, it says that the initial amount authorized for 10 million and it was reduced by 5 million at January 31st, 2023, and that the contracts are awaiting amendments for BOE approval. So we're now in June 16th, 2025. Have these not been approved by the BOE?
Tiffany Greenmeyer, for the record. Let me call up Public Behavioral Health to answer the questions on the contract. Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. We'll have to get back to you on that question and have some more clarifying information for you.
Madam Chair, can I add to what they're going to clarify?
Yes.
So are you going to clarify whether or not BOE has met and reviewed these contracts and then made a decision whether or not they were going to fund it or not? Because if that happened in 23 and we're in 25, it had to have come up. And so I want like really super detail on what's going on related to that, because clearly there's been no approval.
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. Yes, we'll provide you detailed information in writing as to when those contracts were approved by the BOE.
Or if they were ever, because the note says that.
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record, yes. Or if they have not been, or what's the status?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And we'll go to Assemblymember Backus.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and welcome, GFO. My question pertains to, on the chart, the ARPA chart, page 4, line 50, and this pertains to the funding that was provided to OSIT for broadband. And as I remember during, I think, our last IFC and several finance meetings, Ways and Means finance meetings, during session, we had a lot of conversation about OSIT's ability to spend down this funding. At the conclusion of session, news hit that the federal government was rescinding our BEAD funding. And I know on the chart, it shows that the funding for fiscal year 25, 26, and 27 as being project expenditures, and these are based on existing contracts. Now with the BEAD funding no longer being available, I was just curious if OSIT, if you know if they're going to be able to utilize this funding by December 31st, because I know there was different levels of priority and it was to kind of be used for the BEAD funding. So I was kind of curious about the status of those ARPA funds.
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. So Mr. Mitchell is not available today for this meeting, but any questions that I cannot answer, I'll have him provide in writing. But from my understanding right now on the BEAD grant, the NTIA, which is National Telecommunications and Information Administration, which this information was provided by Mr. Mitchell, is asking all states to do one more best and final offer before approving grants. So they have to submit more information on the project. And then, so OSIT is currently working on that, and per Brian Mitchell, they're to have that completed within less than 90 days. So with that, I would have to assume right now that he still can spend the funding. But we can confirm that in writing.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much. And Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that Assemblymember Backus was sort of getting at the same item that I had questions on, item number 50, and just hopeful that we can get some more clarification on that, because I know there was a very lengthy discussion and concerns from the money committees about whether or not OSIT would be able to spend all of this money in accordance with the contracts that they had secured. And so if we're not able to use these ARPA dollars to match that BEAD funding and have those plans approved, what the plan would be for this money in order to execute and deliver on those contracts. I think there's probably going to be a lot of questions around that entire project and what it looks like in the future, or what the backup plan may be for these ARPA dollars if in fact we can't then utilize them as matching funds for the BEAD funding. So anyway, just hopeful that we can get some timely clarification on those items, because obviously if we have to reobligate these funds to a different project, that has to happen very, very soon. So anyway, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Assemblymember Backus.
Thank you very much. And with that, we'll go to Assemblymember Anderson up north.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing forward this information. My question, I've got two of them. The first one has to do with number 107 on page 15. Understanding you might not have this update, but it has to do with the CASA Association to increase local staffing levels, and was just wondering how that work with the nonprofits is currently going, or if we could get an update on that. And understand if that's not available today, but if you could get that to us.
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. Yes, we'll get you an update in writing on that.
Thank you so much. And then, Chair, may I have another question?
Yes, please.
Thank you. On page 17, again, this is going to be one of the weird ones. It's number 131. It has to do with funding for the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, water especially. And noticing the notes, there's no special plan at this time, and yet there is some money that's been set aside for this special plan. What is the status of that plan? Because I think this is something that's, water is kind of important to us. So just wondering what the status is at this time.
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. If we have someone here from DCNR that would have a status, let me see. We'll have to get you that in writing. Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. I don't see anybody here from DCNR.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions from the committee? All right, I don't believe I hear any. So with that, thank you, Ms. Greenmeyer and your team for being here today, and thank you for that information. And if anyone has any further questions, I'm sure that they can reach out individually. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, we'll close that agenda item and we'll go on to agenda item D. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Thorley from LCB Fiscal to go over the items on list D, E, L, and P that will be pulled for discussion. And then we will be taking a vote on things not pulled. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wayne Thorley for the record, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. I'll begin with list D. Items D1, 2, 6, 7, and 8 have all been identified to be pulled for discussion and will be heard jointly. Again, that's D1, 2, 6, 7, and 8. That's it for list D. Moving on to list E. Starting on page 5. Agenda item E27, State Department of Agriculture, Agriculture Administration. Item has been identified to be pulled for discussion. And then jumping way ahead to page 14. Agenda item E69, Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Welfare and Supportive Services, administration budget. That has been identified to be pulled for discussion. And that is it for list E. Then moving on, there is agenda item H does have a list associated with it. There are 2 requests on list H for allocations of the language access plan implementation funding. Both H1 and H2 will be pulled and heard when we get to that agenda item. Moving on to list L. No items on list L have been identified to be pulled for discussion. However, I would like to note a small error on the list. Items L1, 2, and 3 all have relates to items associated with them. And the relates to references list I, and it's actually list E. So when it says relates to, for example, L1 relates to, it says I-52 and I-53. That's actually E-52 and E-53. And same for the other two items on list L. When it says relates to, that's actually list E and not list I. Lastly, moving on to the informational items list P. Item 4A, which is a report from the Housing Division, progress report on the Windsor Park project. That will be pulled for discussion. And that is it, Madam Chair.
Okay, any additional items to be pulled by anyone on the committee? Hearing none, thank you very much. And I'll go to Mr. Thorley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if the committee would like to make a motion to approve the remaining items, the motion would be then to approve all items on lists D, E, and L that were not pulled for discussion. So that would be the motion.
Thank you very much. Assemblymember Backus.
Madam Chair, I'd so move.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Backus, and second by Senator Canizaro. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And with that, if anyone doesn't need to be here, you get to leave. This is the best part. We'll give you just a minute. Or you can stay. It's lots of fun. All right, with that, we will go to the first agenda item, D1 and 2, which will be heard together. And including 6, 7, and 8.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Galloway, L-E-S-A-G-A-L-L-O-W-A-Y, and I'm the ARPA coordinator with the Governor's Finance Office. And I'm pleased to present Work Program 25 FR 132751 to you this morning. This work program requests the transfer of federal American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, coronavirus state and fiscal recovery funds of $217,868 from CAT 23 ARPA projects and $2,721,280 from Category 34 ARPA services for specific population to increase Category 33 ARPA public health by $2,939. Sorry, try that again. $2,939,148, and also request the transfer of $5 million of Federal American Rescue Plan Act coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds from CAT 31 ARPA Public Health to CAT 24 ARPA state agency allocations. These transfers align budgetary account authority within the COVID-19 relief programs account with the individual state agency budget accounts. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on this item? Not seeing any. Does that complete the information that you need to give us on all those pulled items?
Dina Schmidt for the record. Madam Chair, would you like us to go through the associated work programs associated with number 1? So DPBH has 6, 7, and 8, and I can do an overview of those if that's your pleasure.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. So Dina Schmidt for the record. I serve as the administrator for Division of Public and Behavioral Health. These 3 work programs transfer a total of $2,939,148 in ARPA savings to 2 different projects in the Southern Nevada Adult Mental Health account to support jail-based programming for our forensic clients. As you heard in previous testimony throughout the session, the division's intent is to use all available ARPA funds to support the jail-based programming. While our nurses apprenticeship program was a time-ended program, and we had some savings there, as well as in our skilled nursing beds for forensic patients, the projections came in were limited, and so that created some savings as well. And I do have with me today all of my staff and esteemed team members who know more than I do about these topics. So if you have specific questions related to those, I have Drew Cross with me here at the table, and I have Mitch DeValier available as well.
Thank you very much. Any questions on this item? Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in regards to the wraparound services that are occurring, I know in public comment it was mentioned, but do we have data that is focused on the recidivism associated with these wraparound services that are happening?
Good morning, Madam Chair. For the record, Marla McDade Williams. I serve as the administrator for the Division of Child and Family Services. So the wraparound services are associated with item 2 on this list. And I do have the intent of these services was to identify high needs populations, to prevent disruptions from families, to ensure that if someone was being released from a residential treatment facility and going back into the community, that they were wrapped in services to successfully help them be maintained in the community. I do have data that I am happy to submit on a whole. I can tell you that the program itself has had struggles trying to get families to commit to the intensity of the wraparound services that are required. So we've had approximately 124 youth enrolled in. Services actually were began February of 2024. They didn't really get off the ground until June of last year. We have had significantly more people not engage with services than have engaged in services. So we've had, if I'm reading this correctly, 451 of 578 referrals were actually closed without services being provided. And the intent of this, again, is to build a provider network, one, to provide the wraparound services, but also to try to help families engage. And so what this opportunity is giving us is the chance to figure out what level of intensity of services we can actually get families to be successful at. And that's where we're moving into this next phase of this project.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the follow-up. So you said it was 451 families that were offered services, but they didn't take the services, but did the entities still bill and a service wasn't actually taken?
For the record, Marla McDade Williams. So this is a grant. It's a contract that we have entered into with a vendor. And so, yes, the vendor is still paid for services, whether or not somebody engages. And then at some point, and then they are responsible for paying out when a family does engage. But there is a whole administrative network that is with any contract opportunity where, yes, their payments will continue to be made because the work is still being done, even though the service provision may not be meeting the goals of the services that were intended to be provided.
So follow up, because I'm confused. So what is the plan? How are we mitigating what's going on with the families? So if the families are not receptive to services or the kind of services or the type of services, what is getting ready to be done differently? And I mean, I'm assuming, who are the partners in this? You have the vendor, but are the local governments partners in this? Or are they not in partners in CD2?
For the record, Marla McDade Williams. Primarily, the biggest partner is Clark County Family Services. So they have made 167 referrals. DCFS has made 76. The Harbor has made 89. Parent referrals, 96. Other children's mental health providers, 20. Schools, 44. In-state facilities, 47. Managed care organizations, 6. Probation and parole, 16. And unknown, 17. So we are working with the entities that continue to see the youth, whether they be in juvenile justice or children's mental health or, child welfare system. Trying to see if I can get the data here on. And then I will say that if a family doesn't want to engage in the highest level of services, that they are trying to step them down to essentially case management, which requires less of a family obligation. So I do know that is an effort that we have been working through. We've revised the contract to have more of a direct oversight role with Medicaid so that we're holding them accountable for actually building the provider network in a different way than we have to, again, try to ensure that we can actually get the services delivered. I'm sorry. I hope that answers your question.
I thank you for the responses. I guess I don't know if it's early in the morning. It's not really early because I've been up since 6. But in the public comment, and maybe you can tell me if the public comment is not associated with D1 or 2, there were comments that this has been a success. So how can something be a success if families have been, yes, contacted, but no services have actually been provided? So you gave a number of 451. We listed that there are families' reluctance to take on services, whether or not it be the type or the duration. And so I'm trying to understand what is the success, because really, if there's no success and we're really just revamping to hold on to the dollars and saying, well, let's take another shot, let's mix the paint around and then see if we get a different outcome, that is not a success. That is saying we need to regroup and figure out how to use the money to find success, but there is no success.
For the record, Marla McDade Williams. So I will say that the comments that were made in public comment were for something entirely different. They were for the jail-based restoration services for people who have committed crimes, and they are trying to get them to a point where they can defend themselves for in court. This is an entirely different activity that is in item 2.
Okay. That is helpful because I was merging the two. And I think, you know, further information, Chair, on these entities that are billing and then there are no services actually being rendered. I think there needs to be a further look into this because these are folks that are saying they're community partners and have had populations or believe that they understand the population that they're working with. And I'm not clear on how it is that they can't get the families to accept services that a child or youth may need. That is still unclear, but I won't hold up the rest of this conversation. I just think we need a deeper dive later on this.
Thank you very much, Senator. And I see Mr. Musgrove in the audience, and I don't know if he can shed a little bit of light on this, but I'll give him a try. Good morning and thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dan Musgrove. My cell phone is off. Just to,
Thank you very much because it's painful when it's not.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To Senator Neal, I'm here on behalf of Magellan Health Care, who is the vendor on item 2. And I want to make sure that you guys understand that we have actually engaged with over 450 families. And when we talk about these high intensity services, it's a commitment of 30, 60, and 90 days by the family. And sometimes the family is just not able to commit to that kind of level of service because you're talking potentially a single parent family with multiple kids. And this is one child of theirs that they would have to potentially change a lot of what they're doing at home to try to get this child in these services. And so what we do is we work with that family and we stay in touch with them to try to work with them to get lower level of services that they can do. So when we talk about it, see, Magellan takes an administrative fee, and then we pass on most of the dollars of this contract to those providers that we have engaged, and we do wrap around ourselves. And so, again, there is contact with the family and there is working with them, but we're not able to get them into the higher level. And so that's a much higher cost. And that's what this whole agenda item is all about. This is a pilot program. These are kids that have been identified the Department of Justice as being in needs of higher levels of service. We need to help them try to prevent them from going into RTCs, residential treatment, out of state. We need to help them when they come back from those treatment. And that's what this care management entity program was all about, was DCFS getting ahead of the DOJ settlement, knowing that we needed to work with these kids and families. And that's what this pilot program has been all about. But when the dollars were asked for back in October of 2022, we had caseload projections and we just have not met those because, again, we started out in just Clark and Elko because that was the choice of DCFS, that we start small, one big county, one small county. And now we went statewide as of June of 2025, just 18 days ago. So now we're statewide and we're working with all of those agencies that Administrator McDade Williams talked about, Clark County, Elko County, providers like now in the community that have these kids. And so that's what the program has been. It's been a pilot. And what we've seen is we're not going to spend all the dollars that were allocated. And we want to make sure that all of us are good stewards and return it so it doesn't just sit on the table and have to go back to the feds.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. Are there any questions? Further questions up north? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Musgrove. You're off the hook, and we appreciate your time. All right, with that, I will need a motion to approve D1, 2, 6, 7, and 8.
Madam Chair, I would so move to approve D1, 2, 6, 7, and 8.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Backus, and second by Senator Canizero. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much, and thank you for your time this morning. All right, we will move on to E 27. $69. That's it. Okay, we'll start with E27. Go ahead. Please go ahead when you're ready.
All right. Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. For the record, Kathy Balkin, Administrator of Administrative Services at the Department of Agriculture. Work program C75664 requests the addition of cost allocation funds of $80,650 transferred from our plant health and compliance budget account, $59,610 transferred from the food and nutrition budget account, $55,578 transferred from our animal industry budget account, $45,584 transferred from measurement standards budget account, and $26,299 transferred from our animal industry budget account, and a transfer of $180,000 from our reserves category to the personnel category to fund a projected shortfall for FY25. With that, I will answer any questions.
All right, any questions on E27? Not seeing any. I believe we may have a question from Assemblymember Hadagi. I'm sorry, Assemblymember Yeager.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. We're all getting back.
I couldn't see you, and so I was guessing in the dark. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions on this item. So the first question is, what prompted the department to change its cost allocation reimbursement methodology from utilizing budgeted expenses to actual expenses, thereby eliminating the reserves?
One second, I do have this answer. So these budget accounts are usually cost allocated and not, we don't usually have a big reserve in 4554. We don't carry reserves in this one because everything is cost allocated. Our methodology should be the same.
Further questions, Speaker Yeager?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I was just making sure. My understanding from reading the backup material was that the methodology did change from utilizing budgeted expenses to actual expenses. Are you able to confirm whether the methodology changed, or do you believe it to be the same as it was before?
For the record, Kathy Balkin, our methodology should be the same. The reserves were cost allocations collected from previous years.
Okay, and then Chair, if I could ask.
And those went unused. Those were ones that went unused.
Thank you. And Chair, could I ask one more question, please?
Please.
So I think you mentioned it, but I just wanted to confirm that this proposal would eliminate the reserves in fiscal year 2025. Would that have a negative impact on cash flow and the daily operations of the department in the 25 to 27 biennium?
For the record, Kathy Balkin, no, it will not.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any additional items, questions on E27? If not, I will. With that, I will take a motion.
Madam Chair, I would move to approve E27.
Thank you very much. Assemblymember Backus, second from Senator Canizaro. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries, and we'll move on to E69.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Committee. For the record, I'm Robert Thompson, the Administrator of the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services. I have with me in the north our Chief Financial Officer, Crystal Bousquet. We're here today presenting work program C74081. Our request is an addition of $1,377,593 in federal funds from the Department of Agriculture to move into our agency to align our authority for our food stamp outreach program. And we are here for any questions.
Assemblymember Backus.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Administrator Thompson. My question kind of is analogous to this program. A constituent just recently reached out to me regarding new verification requirements for the SNAP program. And so I wanted to kind of follow up in light of these federal funds. I didn't know if this was like a new condition, but as those requirements included proof of showing like verification of residency through leases as well as utility bills. And what I was concerned about is obviously SNAP benefits could go to some of our most vulnerable populations that may be actually unhoused or maybe renting a room. And so I just kind of wanted more clarification from the division regarding those new verification requirements and if those are tied to the federal funds, just because it just didn't seem logical to me, and I wanted to make sure we kind of understood that a little better.
So thank you for the question. Robert Thompson for the record. The situation that you are describing does not have to do with our outreach program. The outreach program is 100% federal funds that provide funding for the agency to pay our staff to go out into the community to connect with people to allow them to apply for food stamps. The situation that you're describing is there are current proposals to change the funding for the food stamp program. Historically, the food stamp program has always been 100% federally funded for the benefit that goes out. The benefit, the state has always paid 50% of the administrative cost for the food stamp program, with the benefit being paid by the federal government. The current proposal that is part of the Budget Reconciliation Act will require the states to provide part of the food stamp benefit for the first time, and the amount of the benefit that will go out depends on how accurate our casework is. The federal government comes in and they audit our casework, and they of course want our casework to be accurate. Nevada has historically been very accurate. We are the 12th most accurate state in the nation, and we are very proud of that. But the new requirements would mandate that the states pay 5% of the food stamp benefit that goes out if our error rate is above 6%. Our error rate teeters right at 6%, right above 6%. And we've done an analysis and have shown that one of the top reasons that the food stamp benefit audits are not passing audit is our customers provide information of what their rent is and what their utilities are that turn out not to be 100% accurate after the fact. So during those audits, we've taken their word for it. We've always taken their word for it because we were so accurate. There was no risk to the state if the food stamps were off by a few dollars, and it got the benefit out faster. Now, there could be a cost to the state of up to $50 million of general fund each fiscal year if our cases are not perfectly accurate. So the only way that we can assure that those two items that we have found to be error prone are accurate, or to ask our customers to verify upfront before we issue their benefits, or we're going to pay it on the back end.
Thank you, Chair, for a follow-up. So with respect to those vulnerable populations that may be unhoused and they may not have a rent, if I'm understanding you correctly, if they put 0 as their rent, they wouldn't have to provide any verification, and that they could still benefit from the SNAP benefits. This is just purely for those that disclose that they're making payments somehow, whether they could show a receipt. I just want to make sure that we're getting benefits to those that really do need the benefits, and we're not excluding a vulnerable population.
Robert Thompson, for the record, you are 100% accurate. Somebody that has 0 income, there is no way to prove a 0, nor would the 0 impact their food stamp benefit. When people receive food stamps, the higher their rent is, the more food stamps that they receive in a very complicated federal government budget. The issue is that people have come in and said we're paying $600 a month rent, and it turned out that their roommate was paying half of that. And when we find that after the fact, that causes an error in our budgeting. But somebody that is homeless or paying 0, we would never question that because it has no impact to the budget.
Thank you very much. And I believe Senator Neal had a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I was listening to this conversation, and I know that you're going out and checking the eligibility, but in the Reconciliation Act, or what Hakeem Jeffries is calling the big ugly tax bill, they're now putting a work requirement for TANF, my understanding. I think it's in the around page 300 in the bill, that they are basically saying that you have to prove, and that the top age is up to 64. The current threshold is 54, and they're raising it by 10 years and saying that a person will have to prove that they are working to some degree, and prove that they're working, volunteering, or enrolled in some educational program in order to qualify for food assistance. So knowing that this could potentially be the new requirement, what are we doing if we're going out and trying to get folks eligible? And I mean, I don't know too many 64-year-olds who are working, but now those particular individuals may not be eligible for food assistance if this bill was to make it out of the Senate.
So Robert Thompson, for the record, the regulation that you're referring to has been called the Able-Bodied Adults Without Dependents Program for the food stamp program. Historically, that program impacted recipients aged 18 through age 50. The proposal does increase that to go through age 64. But there are many in the current regulations, and assuming the regulations are going to follow the current regulations and just extends the age. People that were receiving Social Security early retirement benefits, people that are working in kind for their rent, working 20 hours per week in kind for the rent, they were considered working or volunteering. We have a SNAP education program. We do refer people to that program, and the outreach that we do ties into that loosely. The outreach is primarily for the eligibility program, trying to connect people with the benefit, but we do use those employees to also connect and educate for Job Connect or training programs or education programs. We have gone through robust training with our staff the last time the Able-Bodied Adults Without Dependents program went into effect, to make sure that we were connecting every Nevadan with the benefit that they could receive, and we would continue doing that. It will require more of our staff to do that, of course, because more of the customers will fall into this program, but we would never stop connecting with those people.
So since there's an age increase, and you're saying 50 instead of 54, so if we now have a population that's up to 64 years of age, how many persons are you now going to have to reach out to that fall in between the gap of age 50 to age 64, who we now have to make a touch point to? Because number one, they could fall out of the program, but do you have you guys had to do any initial numbers of who we're actually going to be affecting with this law change of up to 64?
Robert Thompson, for the record, I do not have any statistics on the number of applicants that would fall into this, because the current regulations also don't count people that are homeless or veterans or those types of people. So we don't have that data, but I do want to point out that anyone applying for food stamps is required to come in and have a face-to-face interview with us, or at least have a telephone call with us. So we would not be reaching out to them for them to apply. We are already connected with them, and we would use the opportunity of the interview to educate them, make them aware that you can only receive food stamps for 3 months every 3 years unless you are in these work programs, and we've used that opportunity to connect them with those work programs.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions from the committee on this? Okay, if not, I will accept a motion.
Madam Chair, I would move to approve E69.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Backus, and a second from Senator Canizaro. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And thank you for your time today. And we will move on to F. And I'll ask Mr. Thorley to present this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wayne Thorley, for the record, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. I will go over the agenda item F, which is the IFC contingency account balance statement. The statement can be found in volume 4 of the packets, either the printed packets or the one online. Beginning on page 7, the statement, I should say, begins on page 7 of volume 4. We are shortly approaching the end of fiscal year 25, and we'll be moving into fiscal year 26. So the statement in the packet includes both fiscal year 25 and 26. Most of the requests for allocation from the IFC contingency account today that are on the agenda are for fiscal years 25. So agenda item, all of agenda item G, H, and I are from fiscal year 25. And then agenda item J would be from 26. So that's why we have both fiscal years included in the packet. I'll just give a high-level summary, again, beginning on page 7 of volume 4, and then happy to answer any questions that you all might have, because there are several moving parts at this time. There is quite a few allocations from the legislature approved 2 years ago in 2023 for the current biennium. That will be reverting to the general fund at the end of this fiscal year. And then there's several allocations that the legislature, the 2025 legislature, just approved for 26. So those will be getting added to the statement. So you'll see quite a bit of money coming off and added in. But to get to the bottom line, if you go down on page 7, the summary table, about the middle of the page, there are about $1.2 million worth of unrestricted requests for 25 pending today. And then an additional $3.2 million of restricted requests pending for a total of about $4.4 million in FY25 requests. If those are approved, the remaining balance at the end of after this meeting, total, both restricted and unrestricted, would be about $167.4 million. Then moving into FY26, as I mentioned, there's some new allocations that the legislature approved being added on, and then some reversions coming off. There's one pending allocation at the meeting today. That's for restricted funding, both highway and general fund, totaling $39.2 million. If that is approved, the remaining balance in the contingency account, both unrestricted and restricted, would be approximately $130 million. That would be split up between $36.4 million of unrestricted general fund, about $1.6 million of unrestricted highway fund, and then about $91.9 million of restricted highway and general fund. And happy to answer any questions that the committee members might have.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee? Up north, any questions? Okay, seeing none, this is an informational item. So we will move on to item G. And we will start with the Office of the Attorney General. And I believe Ann Jones is here to present. Am I correct? Please go ahead when you're ready.
Sorry, my allergies are kind of killing me today. For the record, I'm Ann Jones, the ASO 3 at the AG's office. Our chief of staff should be on the phone in case I can't answer any questions. She said she was going to call in. Again, sorry for my voice. So this work program is to request IFC contingency funds to cover additional costs associated with current AG office in investigation staff to provide dignitary protection assistance to AG Ford. Any questions that I can answer?
Thank you very much. I believe Senator Cannizzaro, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate you being here, Mr. Jones. Can you talk to us just about what impact it has had on the office, assigning those additional existing investigator positions to dignitary protection, and what impact that has had on your office's ability to manage the criminal investigation workload?
For the record, Ann Jones again. We had to assign 8 current people to go with AG Ford all across the state when he was doing public appearances. And so obviously because they were out with him, they couldn't provide some of their current job duties. So that did potentially slow down the investigation for some of our court cases.
And I appreciate obviously we received a lot of information this last legislative session about the increased threats and the increased nature of the threats. And I have to say, just in the wake of what we've seen in the last week with elected officials, that's increasingly concerning, right? And so I know that those conversations that we had during the legislative session, I think have only been highlighted in the last week or so, in making sure that we can ensure that people are safe when they agreed to step up and serve in a public forum and do public service. And so I know we approved for some additional positions to be funded for dignitary protection services to ensure that the office could continue to operate with its investigators and then also have dignitary protection with those increases of threats and the increased severity of the threats for the Attorney General. And so those new dignitary positions approved by the legislature are not approved for funding until October 1st. So can you talk to us just a little bit about how dignitary protection will be funded by the office for the first 3 months in fiscal year 2026?
Again, sorry. For the record, Ann Jones. I don't have in my notes how we're going to fund that for the first 3 months of the new state fiscal year. So if I can ask when I get back to the office and let you guys know later with a follow-up. I don't want to say anything and not be correct or accurate.
No, I appreciate that, Ms. Jones, and certainly we would be happy to get that information from you. I think for my part, Madam Chair, we heard about these concerns during the legislative session, and I think exceedingly important that we make sure that to the extent that we are aware of threats and can also make sure that we are mitigating those with appropriate security for elected office holders, that we can do so. And so that rounds out my questions on this item, Madam Chair, and be happy to make a motion if you would like. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if I don't have any additional questions, I will call for the motion. Senator Canizero?
I would so move to approve item number G1.
Thank you very much. And a second from Assembly Member Backus. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here with us. And we will move on to G3, Department of Health and Human Services.
Dina Schmidt for the record. I'm the Administrator for Division of Public and Behavioral Health. And with me today, I have Drew Cross, our statewide Forensic Mental Health Coordinator. This request before you today is for funds in the amount of $753,500 to pay sanctions imposed by the Second Judicial Court in Washoe County for delays in admitting individuals to our inpatient forensic restoration program. As many of you have heard throughout the legislative session, Mr. Cross and Dr. Dillinger and their teams have worked diligently to increase capacity for forensic beds across the state. And with the support of the governor and the legislature this session, we will continue to build on that progress. And with the approval of these funds, with that progress included the funds for a new forensic hospital, as well as increasing access to our jail-based programming that you heard about this earlier today. At this time, no payments have been made to Washoe County due to insufficient funding, but they will commence upon approval of this funding request before you today. And with that, we stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. And with that, I'll ask for any questions here in Las Vegas or up in Carson City. Speaker Yeager?
Thank you.
I can't see you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a couple of questions on this one. The first question was just I understand that the court issued basically is making you pay this fine to Washoe County. Do we know what that money is going to be used for? Is it just going to Washoe County's general fund, or did the court indicate that it would be earmarked for something in particular?
Good morning, Drew Cross for the record. Madam Chair, through you to Assemblymember Yeager. The court identified these funds as supporting individuals who are currently being paid out of Washoe County at the Washoe Detention Center. That's how it was described.
Okay, thank you for that response. And then, Chair, if I could ask one more question on this item, please.
Please go ahead.
We heard a little bit about, in this presentation and also during the legislative session, about the a new forensic bed capacity, and that's, I think, slated to reach 384 after opening the new hospital and transferring Ross and Neal and Stein to the Campus for Hope. So the question is, with those beds coming online and coming online at some point, and with what we have currently capacity-wise, is there going to be sufficient capacity for the state to meet the long-term forensic bed need?
Drew Cross, for the record. Madam Chair, through you to Assemblymember Yeager. The projections for the new facility, the Southern Nevada Forensic Facility, should be adequate through 2035. It should also be noted that there is space and some limited design for an additional 91 beds to be added to that if necessary.
Great, thank you for that response. I think that's all my questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And with that, any additional questions? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd move to approve G3.
Thank you very much. And a second from Senator Canizaro. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries, and we'll move on to G4B. And please go ahead when you are ready.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. For the record, my name is Major James Simpson, SAMPSON, with the Nevada Highway Patrol. This request seeks general fund contingency funding in the amount of $227,171 to address a projected shortfall in state fiscal year 2025 within the dignitary protection category of the Nevada Highway Patrol's budget. This shortfall is a result of actual and anticipated costs resulting to providing protective services for visiting dignitaries. Presidential and vice presidential visits in both northern and southern Nevada have exceeded the fiscal year's budgetary authority. The later portion of calendar year 2024, which corresponds to the beginning of state fiscal year 2025, was an election period that had brought an increased number of campaign-related events which required dignitary protective services. The dignitary protection category is the only category within budget account 4713 that is funded by general funds. This request reflects our best effort to estimate both actual and projected costs for the remainder of the fiscal year. However, due to unprecedented nature of these events, it is difficult to precisely forecast the number and scope of future visits. While we do not currently anticipate additional shortfalls, should actual costs through June 30th, 2024 exceed today's projections, the division may need to return in August with a subsequent funding request. If there are any questions, we are here to answer those questions, and that would be ASO 3, Crystal Novetny, and ASO 2, Brandy Salisbury to my right.
Thank you very much. And I believe Senator Pizzina has a question.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for presenting here on item 4 today. I was curious how it was determined that an additional $28,617 would be needed to fund anticipated protective service costs for the remainder of the fiscal year. I noticed you mentioned potentially coming back in August, and if the sum that you provided today was intended for the rest of the year, or if, I guess, how you determined it and whether you need to come back again.
Good morning, committee. Crystal Novotny for the record. We at this time do not anticipate coming back. We based our numbers off of total cost, an average of total cost multiplied by 2 projected events that we have, and we currently only have 1 anticipated event. So we do see savings with this, the other event being canceled.
Thank you so much. And I do have one additional question. Has the agency confirmed that the anticipated additional events that have occurred or will occur in FY25 justify it? It looks like, maybe one isn't going to happen. So I was just curious.
Yes, all the events are justified. We work hand in hand with the United States Secret Service, and they kind of dictate what events we will cover.
Thank you so much.
James Simpson
And
for the
thank
record.
you. Thank you very much. All right, with that, any additional questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd move to approve G4B.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Backus, second from Senator Canizaro. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries, and thank you all for being here, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
All righty, we will move on to G5, Department of Veterans Services, and I believe Ms. Devine is here today to present.
Good morning, Joe Thiele for the record, T-H-E-I-L-E, Executive Officer for the Department of Veterans Services. Director Devine could not be here today, her apologies. I'm here to present for item 5, which is a request for the allocation of $49,971 to fund costs associated with projected shortfalls in personnel services, information services, and the Fernley Cemetery categories of budget account 2560. Addition of a couple of contracts for the Fernley Cemetery, a non-responsive provider of security services required us to get a different contract, and a new MSA for uniform services went into place with additional costs, and we stand to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Any questions on this particular item? Okay, seeing none and hearing none, with that, I'll accept a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd move to approve G5.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Backus. A second from Senator Canizaro. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries, and thank you very much for being with us today. I think you get the award for the quickest. All right, with that, we'll go to G6, Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. And I believe I saw Mr. Donahue in the audience. Oh, okay. We're here in Las Vegas. Please go ahead when you are ready.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Charlie Donahue, D-O-N-O-H-U-E. I serve as the administrator for the Division of State Lands. Today before you is a request for $151,954 to replenish the agency's revolving fund. We use these funds for things such as appraisals, surveys, biological assessments on state properties or when we're trying to secure property. And if you do have any questions, committee members, and I can't answer it, I neglected to introduce the agency's Deputy Administrator, Ellery Stoller. My apologies.
Thank you very much and welcome to both of you. All right, any questions for the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources? Seeing none, hearing none. All right, with that, I'll accept a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd move to approve G6.
Thank you very much. Assemblymember Backus, second from Senator Canizaro. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, with that, I will move on to item H. H1. And please go ahead. Please go ahead when you are ready.
Good morning. For the record, Chris Sewell, Director of the Department of Employment Training and Rehabilitation. It's been a long time since I saw everyone again. This work program is for translation services in the amount of $19,950 out of the 2023 bill so that we can get translation services up and running for our constituents and citizens of Nevada. And I stand for any questions.
All right, with that, are there any questions on item H1? All right, hearing none, I will accept a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd move to approve H1.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Backus. Second from Senator Canizaro. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And we will move on to H2. Thank you very much for being here with us today. And am I correct, Mr. Armstrong? Nope, Mr. Marlowe. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, Daniel Marlowe, Administrator, Administrative Services Division, Department of Administration. I believe we may have a representative from the Ethics Commission on the phone, but this request is for the staggering allocation of $2,495 to implement language access plan.
Okay, any questions on this particular item? Up north? Hearing none? All righty, with that, I'll accept a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd move to approve H2.
Thank you very much. Assemblymember Backus, second from Senator Canizaro. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Marlowe, for being here with us today. And we will move on to item I. And I believe we have Mr. Brisky or, oh, Dr. Canavero. How are you? Good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, Steve Canavero, Interim State Superintendent of Public Instruction, joined here in Carson City by Deputy Superintendent Peterson, and in the South with Director Brisky. First, thank you for agendizing this item, and thanks to your capable staff and their collaboration with us to continue to support the Teach Nevada Scholarship Program. The work program before you requests a transfer of $3,208,023 from funding set aside in Senate Bill 503, Section 14 to cover the Teach Nevada Scholarship. The funds would support the preliminary awards made by the State Board of Education for fiscal year 25 and be obligated by June 30 of this year. Of the amount, the 2.869 goes directly to the scholarships, and we're requesting in Cat 85 roughly $338,000 for reserve. And we're available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. And I do believe we have some questions, and I'll start up north with Senator Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning. Good morning, good to see you. Just a couple of questions as I continue to learn more in this role, being a part of finance. Just a couple of questions, Madam Chair, if I may. My first question in reading the background material is that the Board of Education committed just over $6 million, right? About $6.1 million for the 75% scholarship award. And I love the whole program around Teach Nevada and then how we allocate and have the 25% at the end. But but they did this before they received the authority. And I'm wondering, and that's not, that's not consistent. How did that happen?
Steve Canavero, and I'll lean on Director Brisky for additional sort of history, but the State Board tends to issue preliminary awards so that the institutions have an understanding of what's available for the scholarships. And then we reconcile that with the number of students, and then we either fund that or come to IFC for a request for the available scholarships. But Director Brisky, do you wish to add some further detail?
Sure, Jeff Brisky, ND for the record, Director of Licensure and Overseer of the Scholarships.
Yes, so as Superintendent Canavero had just outlined there, the state board, we get an opportunity in the spring or early summer to go in front of them to ask for awards, which still is their under their purview to give those awards. So what we do is we look at our allocation, our annual allocation is usually around $2.4 million. And then we noticed that there was some additional contingency funding at 3.2. So we added that into the motion should those funds become available. And that's what we're here asking for today is those additional $3.2 million. So rather than going back to the board asking again for another motion and additional awards, we just asked it in the first motion, much or similar to how you do sometimes with asking staff to make technical adjustments.
Thank you, Mr. Brisky.
Thank you.
Madam
Go
Chair,
ahead,
if I may continue, thank you. I look down towards the middle of the table, and you aren't here. You're in Las Vegas, so okay. So thank you.
Exactly why I can keep your name straight because I'm not looking at you and Senator Titus.
I don't know, Senator Titus. I don't know if we'll accept that.
I don't know. I agree.
We'll get back to you, Madam Chair. But now on this, so thank you for that, Mr. Brisky. Dr. Canavero, in reading the background materials as well, and I know this predates you, and there's some shifting that's happening in the department, so I certainly acknowledge that. What kinds of things have been put in place to kind of, the tracking kind of got off track, if you will, the following of the resources, of the programs, the funds, and so on. Have you been able to put anything in place so that we stay on top of that in a better way going forward?
Steve Canavero, that's a great question. We've been and really appreciate Director Brisky and Deputy Superintendent Peterson and team because we've been huddled on this for quite some time. And you're right, there have been a number of changes. And actually, Teach Nevada Scholarship, I was here for the initial launch and implementation of the scholarship program, and it's wonderful to see its success, acknowledging that it is a challenge to keep track of. And there have been legislative changes over the course of time that has also sort of impacted our ability to be responsive in the tracking. And for the committee, the tracking that can get a bit difficult is around individual names rather than unique identifiers for participants in Teach Nevada Scholarship. We know that names can often change with marriage or other. And so we have had a difficult time, not so much for the scholarship recipients, but for the ongoing eligibility for after the 5 years plus one, when they can reclaim the 25% benefit. So we think we've got a much better handle on it today than we have in the past. And we believe that Senate Bill 81, to appreciate the legislature and passing Senate Bill 81, we had come to the legislature with some solutions about how to resolve some of the challenges that we've had. Add to that data sharing agreements that we now have with, or are in the process of engaging with UNLV, so that we can utilize unique identifiers for our participants so that we can track on an individual student participant basis. And then Deputy Superintendent Peterson is reminding me of the integration with our new licensing system. So here we'll have these sort of data systems talking to each other and then having an identifier that actually then corresponds from one data system to another so that we can track an individual across. But just if you would allow, I'd love if I have missed anything. I think I've been listening, Director Brisky, and working with you and your team to solve this matter, but if there's anything that you'd like to add, please, by all means, do so.
Thank you, Jeff Brisky, ND, for the record. Just as Deputy Peterson was writing down our new licensing system, I was actually writing down at the exact same time to pass over to Superintendent Canavero. Yes, that is a great thing. We had our first, it was approved at BOE last week and had our first meeting yesterday with our new vendor. It's very exciting that we'll be able to not only track graduates and where they are and what supports they got through the license system, but also scholarship recipients and be able to track it that way. In addition to what Superintendent had said regarding the data sharing agreements and maybe moving to some interlocal agreements rather than subgrants, We're looking into that possibility. We did request a full audit from each of the institutions going back to 2016 to match up with the records that we have to make sure that we didn't miss anything.
Thank you so much, Mr. Brisky. And Deputy Peterson, thank you for your help. I saw you sliding the note. That's good. Just one last question, if I may. You spoke a little bit about the providers making sure the 25%, and I know, and again, in reading the background material, you have had to dip into reserves to kind of cover that. What you just talked about in terms of the data sharing and those new processes in place, how do you anticipate being able to fund any future, right, monies that are due for the provider end of it that are outside of the reserves that you have? I know we ran into that some this year.
Deputy Superintendent Megan Peterson for the record. We do have reserves and categorical funding that is set aside to track with those students. And so you'll note that as part of this work program, we do have $338,000, as Superintendent Cannavero mentioned, that will be going to reserve in order to pay those at future years when the students become eligible.
So you believe that's going to be sufficient then going forward?
Based on our understanding of the trends of eligible students coming back for that reimbursement, it does appear to be sufficient at this time.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you for your indulgence, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. Thanks for your work.
Thank you very much. And I actually have a question on this, and then I believe Senator Neal does as well. So how is the Department of Ed going to allocate that new funding approved by the legislature for the 25-27 biennium to ensure that the sufficient funds are being reserved for liability associated with that current program participants?
Steve Cannavero, Interim State Superintendent. If you don't mind, I defer to Director Brisky for some of that, for initial response.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Director Brisky, go ahead, please.
Sure, Jeff Brisky, ND for the record. I'll see if I can remember the question. I was hoping they wouldn't answer it for me, but here I am. So glad to be here. So if I'm understanding your question correctly, and please change it if I didn't, for future funding, how we will spend it is ensure that it's spent correctly. Was that your question?
How will you ensure that the sufficient funds are being reserved for
sure.
that, liability associated with current program,
Sure.
costs for
Sure.
participants?
Thank you. Yeah, Jeff Brisky, ND for the record. What I typically do after those awards are made is I go back and I work with our fiscal office to ensure, hey, we awarded, for instance, $2.6 million this year. We have to ensure that 25% is going to be held in reserve. So we just do work programs to rebalance those accounts.
Sure. All right. Thank you very much. That helps. All right. With that, I'll go to Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in the commentary, and this is kind of almost along the lines of Senator Taylor's questions, you said that there was an audit requested, but in my notes, the request for program providers to complete detailed funding and participant information from FY 2016 to FY 2025 was due June 16, 2 days ago. Did you receive it?
I have been traveling and I have been tracking that. Jeff Brisky, ND for the record. So yes, for the majority, I don't have that in front of me right now, but for the majority, we have received most of those. I won't be able to tell you until I actually go back and look at it this afternoon. This is my first day back in the office. But yes, I can get that information for you. And we do follow up with phone calls, not just emails, to make sure that we do get it.
So while you're following up, I also have another question. So also in the note, it said that on June 5th, NDE couldn't reconcile the program that there weren't complete records being maintained. So between June 5th and June 16th, when you asked the program providers to give information, did you expect within those 11 days that they would produce complete information or give you incomplete information?
Jeff Brisky and for NDE for the record, we expected that they would give us the best information that they had available, and we continue to work with them to get as much accurate pinpointed down what we can get. And we do realize that many of them are now out on summer break as well when those institutions close down for the summer. Some of their financial people do keep working all summer, but it may be a challenge to get everything pinned down within the next few days.
So follow-up, Chair. So just quickly, so since this is a program that folks are interested in keeping, why don't we just try to get our house in order, right? Get the database, get the reconciliation of data. So there's proof that is an effective program, that the money was used, and then come back and ask for money. Because basically you're going to ask for dollars, and there is evidence from 2016 to 2025 that we don't have any data representing the efficacy of the program. Like, isn't that strange? It's like the cart before the horse, egg before the chicken. I mean, really, it's the chicken for the egg, and I don't see why we would put money into something that we don't have a complete picture on whether or not folks are doing the requirements mandated or requested by the program.
Jeff Brisky, NDE for the record. The information we put forward in today's work program was our records, our best records that we had at the time. What we did is we gave you two separate tables, one at the high end, one at the average end. So if everyone did receive the full $24,000 in scholarships afforded through the bills for those time periods, our liability is displayed on the first table. The second table is the average amount of scholarships they receive in our liability there. So, and below each one of those tables is the actual payout or return on investment. We can see how many teachers are actually staying and working for 5 years and then requesting that money. And I do believe that Senate Bill 460, and someone please correct me if I'm wrong, but we changed some language in Senate Bill 460 to remove the 25% holdback tuition and instead require them by putting a provision on their license so where they will not be able to leave Nevada for a time period, I believe 3 years. So that would be our return on investment there. So we changed the language to best get as much return on investment for this product as possible.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And Senator Canzaro, did you want to make a comment, or are we okay? All right, good. Thank you. All right, with that, I believe Assembly Member. Oh, okay. All righty. Thank you very much. All right. Any additional questions on this item? And with that, thank you very much, and I'll accept a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd move to approve item I.
Thank you very much from Assemblymember Backus, and I'll take a second from Senator Canizaro. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much, and thank you to the Department of Ed for being here today. We will move on to item J. And we have the Office of Project Management with us. Anybody up north or just you down here?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Director Brian Bowles, Office of Project Management for the record. I believe we have Director Greenemeyer in Carson City. A member of our executive committee is likely in the room. Good morning, and thank you for hearing our request this morning. I'm going to turn the body of the request over to our Administrator, Brady Phillips, who is sitting to my left.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Brady Phillips, PHI-LLIPS, and I am the Administrator for the Office of Project Management. On item J today, per AB 593 of the 2025 legislative session, monies appropriated for costs associated with the implementation of the Enterprise Resource Planning System known as CORE-NV have been placed into the IFC Restricted Contingency Account. Agenda item J requests funding from the IFC Restricted Contingency Account for costs associated with the implementation of CORE-NV. This request is for fiscal year 2026 based upon the original contracts negotiated with vendors, as well as the needs of the Office of Project Management and to ensure successful implementation of Core NV. OPM and the Executive Committee have recently executed change requests for the Core NV project with vendor CGI. Finalization of changes to the Phase 2 project schedule were outlined within these change requests. Due to an extension of the Phase 2 completion date from November 2026 to June of 2027, the Phase 2 costs were similarly extended. This has resulted in a reduced request to fund fiscal year 2026. The remainder of costs will be realized in fiscal year 2027. At this time, I request an amendment to our work program for a total reduction of $10,588,058. This will result in a new work program request of $23,191,151 from the general fund and $5,439,900 from the highway fund, for a total of $28,631,051. The implementation of the Core NV project is being conducted with a phased approach, focusing on a minimum viable product. Delivery of the base system functionality for finance occurred on January 1 of 2025. The base system functionality for the human resources component is currently scheduled and on track for an October 2025 release. NDOT components are currently scheduled for a January 2026 release. However, OPM is working with NDOT to determine if realization of NDOT's components can be ready for release simultaneously with human resources in October. This concludes my presentation today. We stand ready for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. And I do believe that Assemblymember Hadagi has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I know the office just mentioned that there would be a release simultaneously, but can the office provide us a complete implementation schedule if you don't have it now that you can walk through with us? Can you send us something for the 25-27 biennium?
Brady Phillips for the record. We sent that over to LCB last Friday. Unfortunately, it did not get to most of the committee members, and I was advised of that on Monday morning that it would likely not, but LCB does have it ready to transmit to you.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And I believe that Assemblymember Backus has a question.
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Chair. My question pertains to the contingency account. As I understand, during session, we were really explicit as to what we were approving and not approving. And then looking at our backup documentation information we obtained, we understand that one of the items that was moved forward was the $5 million in additional funding for Phase 2 alignment. And so my question for you is, why did the Office of Project Management contract for services that the legislature did not approve for the 2025-27 biennium utilizing the change control funding in fiscal year 25?
Thank you for the question. Director Brian Bowles, for the record, through the chair to you, Assemblymember Backus. It's a really good question and one I was hoping to answer this morning. I believe there has been a fundamental misunderstanding amongst staff and then through staff to this body of the nature of our change control funding and the authority granted to the Office of Project Management throughout the life of our project. Simple answer to your question: why did we spend what you're referring to as the $4.669 million out of change control to ensure that we could meet project goals by the end of Phase 2? The cut of that from our budget essentially guaranteed failure for the project. Not to put it too lightly, but that is the short story. We would have arrived at a point in Phase 2 in 2027 when we would have expended essentially all of the funds, and we would not have been able to pay for the extension of up to 70 staff and services from our vendor CGI that was the result of the Phase 2 delay from November 2026 to June of 2027. The fundamental misunderstanding that I speak of is how that change control bucket, which is what we internally refer to it as, was actually authorized. That money was authorized initially in the October 2023 IFC in full. All $10 million of that was requested and approved and appropriated directly to the office's accounts for operationalization at the discretion of the Executive Committee. Since that time, we have requested for it again through the proper documentation and request in the June 2024 IFC to provide that capacity for the office to continue to operationalize those dollars at need and at the discretion of the executive committee throughout fiscal year 2025. It seems that there's been a misunderstanding of the things that we tag and use against that change control dollars, specifically the change to NeoGov and bringing that particular third-party vendor on to change the contract from the original third-party vendors to a new one, the addition of our end user training, which also came out of that, and some other software licenses that were deemed to go against that change control dollar figure. We always had authorization from this body ever since October 2023 to utilize those monies to further the aims of the project. Once that initial, once this session occurred, and we realized that the dramatic funding cuts that the project took during session was going to create a almost certain risk of failure of the project, the executive committee took the step to mitigate that risk entirely by using the remainder of the change control dollars that were at our disposal and fully authorized by this body in order to mitigate that risk.
Madam Chair, I may have a couple follow-ups. And I'm now wanting to go back and listen to the hearing during session because I remember it pretty explicitly. And I may need to rewatch it if my memory doesn't serve, but I remember this one layer being something that was not necessarily necessary, that it could be something that didn't have to be paid. What I understand, usually a contingency control account is not just discretionary spending. It's usually when there's a need that comes up that requires a change to programming. And so it's kind of a catch-all, like whether it's a different module that may be needed to connect up to a software that we weren't anticipating. This seems like something that was decided to be done despite, I thought the legislature was pretty clear during session. And I know going back, and we may have to look back and see what happened in October 2023, but I don't think contingency accounts are just meant for like free use. I don't think that's what the intent. It's usually when there's something comes up. And with respect to this phase 2, as I understood it, was to speed up one of the other areas that we didn't need to necessarily do. And so at this time, it seems like those contingency funds would be exhausted. And the goal was to obviously hold those out in case something unexpected came up. And so I'm just a little confused. And I guess the question for you is, why did the Office of Project Management spend the change control funding after knowing that the legislature appropriated that funding to the IFC contingency account for consideration during the 2025-27 biennium? So you're back before us knowing that we weren't okay with that and choosing to go ahead and use those funds.
Thank you for the question, Assembly Member, through the chair to you. It was, as I stated before, if we had not spent that money in that way, the project would have stopped in November 2026 as originally scoped, and we would not have been able to fulfill the aims of the project. It would have been a failure in phase 2. So it was simply to mitigate that risk and preserve our shot at success rate.
Okay, well, I thank you for that. And then how does the office plan to fund certain NDOT budget structure and custom table costs, as well as the extension of local support services from CGI, which the money committee is recommended to be funded using the change control funding?
Thank you for the question. Assemblyman Rebecca, through the chair to you. We are going to need to come back to this committee in the future to request further dollars in order to meet those particular obligations that you named. This will necessitate us going back to the Board of Examiners to increase the do not exceed amount of CGI's contract so that we can then again come to the IFC with the justification for those particular items.
Madam Chair, may I just make a comment? I guess that will give us an opportunity to dive in this a little more because it is kind of frustrating. If I remember it correctly, is the additional funding that could have been spent, obviously could be used on the back end, was not something, as I remember, not necessarily needed. And so now we're in a situation where decisions were made that's now obviously more funding is going to have to be asked for. And if I remember correctly, the part of this was that this was going to be a guaranteed maximum price. And that's why there was the contingency account. But obviously spending was happening contrary to what the legislature kind of thought was pretty clear during session. But I guess we're going to circle back and have those conversations at a later date when more money is going to be asked for, I guess. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for those questions. Additional questions? Speaker Yeager, did you have a question?
Madam Chair?
I do not have a question on this, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Who do I hear?
Hi,
I'm
this
sorry.
is Assembly Member Monroe Moreno.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question. You just made a statement, the presenters. If this project was in such risk of failure, why wasn't any of that stated on the record during the past legislative session? Because I don't remember hearing anything in any of the hearings, and there were a number of them, that this project was in risk of failure without the funding. Could you elaborate more?
Yes, thank you, Assemblymember Monroe Moreno, through the chair to the other chair. We actually did transmit that information in writing to LCB staff on April 18th for this particular item, that there was extreme risk of project failure if it was not approved. If that information did not make it to the committee, I don't know what to say.
You know what,
We were
Madam
not
Chair,
given the opportunity to speak during our budget closing, and so we did not have the opportunity to answer any questions regarding that particular cut.
Madam Chair, can I have a follow-up?
Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure what you transmitted to our fiscal staff, but I trust our fiscal staff implicitly, and they have no problem sharing information that they receive from every agency to this body, and especially to myself and the chair. But even more so, there have been private meetings with myself, the chair, and the fiscal leaders. And whether you transmitted it in person, whether you stated it on the record, which you did not in any of the hearings, there was never a meeting with myself or the chair that stated this. Can you explain why that didn't happen? Because there was never a time where anyone was shy about requesting a meeting to share any information. So I find it very surprising that you stated today on the record, but never went out of your way, or anyone else that you would report to go out of their way to ask for a meeting, schedule a meeting to share this information with myself and the chair or my vice chair.
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair, through you. All I can say is that we anticipated a similar funding support model that had been ongoing for the previous biennium. And we did escalate to those that we report to that this was of critical importance. We did transmit that to LCB staff on this particular item, that it was of particular importance to the project for this section of funding to be approved. We did not anticipate through any of our conversations with LCB staff up to that point that this was in any particular danger of not being approved. And we felt confident going into budget closing that this item would be approved. And when it wasn't, that was a complete surprise to us. We had fully intended on reverting that amount of money forward into the next biennium so that we could fully scope out exactly the use of that and be fully, forward looking and transparent with this body. But when that cut occurred, that was the moment at which the project became in grave peril of not finishing. And the executive committee, along with the project staff, made the determination to go ahead and mitigate that risk immediately.
Additional questions or comments? Assemblymember Monroe Moreno.
No, Madam Chair, thank you so much. I think it's probably best I not say anything more.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, any additional questions from the committee? All right, with that, I would ask that Assemblymember Backus make a motion that is an adjustment to the ask. So go ahead, please.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I think that we need to dive into this a little further with respect to the funding that has been spent and maybe what's going to be needed. I would feel somewhat comfortable making the motion that we approve just basically the first quarter allocation, which would be a total of $13,914,300 let me repeat that. $13,914,314 broken up as to general funds of $11,270,594 and highway funds of $2,643,720, and ask that the department follow up with staff regarding additional future needs for possible revisiting at the October IFC.
And I would add to that, please make sure that you follow up with staff. And so with that, I'll accept the motion from Assemblymember Backus and a second from Senator Cannizzaro. Any discussion on this motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And we look forward to having you meet with fiscal staff.
Madam Chair, this is Assemblymember Monroe Marino. I wasn't able to get in for discussion, but I do have one last question.
Please go ahead.
Would they be able to let us know how many staff members they are pulling from other agencies to work on this project and how much time those staff members from other agencies are utilizing on this program and what that cost is, that amount is? And if you don't have it today, if you could get that back to the committee, and our fiscal staff will be more than happy to get it to every member.
Brady Phillips for the record. Yes, we can get that information to you.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember. That's a good suggestion. All right, with that, we will close this item and we will go on to item K. And we welcome Mr. Acroft to the table.
Good morning, Chair Dundara-Loop, Vice Chair Monroe Moreno, members of the committee. For the record, Steve Acroft, Administrator of the Nevada Housing Division, pinch hitting today for Perry Fagan, Deputy Director of Business and Industry. On agenda item K, the request to transfer from the IFC committee's account for foreclosure mediation the amount of $127,153. As you've heard, Deputy Director Fagan say at past IFCs, the current funding source and mechanisms are not supporting this program, and so there's a deficiency. And so we come before you to ask for these monies to continue the program. And with that, I'll be happy to try to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee on this item? All right. With that, I'll accept a motion.
Madam Chair, I would move to approve item K.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember. A second from Senator Cannizzaro. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Acroft. We will move on to item L. Oh, sorry. All right. We are on to M. Good morning. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Dorian Stonebarger, Stonebarger, Deputy Director of the Governor's Office of Economic Development, to introduce item M before turning it over. Redwood Materials, Inc. was the first to be approved for a $1 billion investment abatement package, which was at the December 2022 GOED board meeting. This package is comprised of tax abatements and transferable tax credits. Companies meeting the minimum salary requirements can qualify for transferable tax credits at a rate of up to $9,500 per job. On January 31st, 2023, the Interim Finance Committee approved Redwood Materials for transferable tax credit allocation of $2,137,500 based on the company's projection of hiring 225 full-time employees by June of this year. Since that time, Redwood's third-party audit attached to the materials submitted by our office determined that Redwood had created 678 full-time jobs by June of last year, making them eligible for $4,303,500 in transferable tax credits from this fiscal year for the difference of 453 newly created jobs, which is what's before you today. This component of the $1 billion investment abatement package will sunset on June 30th of 2025. The company hopes to utilize this allocation based on their actual performance before the program ceases. Redwood is a Nevada-born company based in Northern Nevada. As such, we have representation up north to provide further comment and answer any questions, starting with a technical overview of transferable tax credits by GOED's Senior Director of Business Development, Melanie Sheldon.
Thank you very much, and go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Melanie Sheldon, for the record, that's MELANIESHELDON, Senior Director of Business Development for GOED. I promise that this will be a very concise follow-on from my colleague's introduction. This is just a little bit of additional context around the program. As my colleague said, this is part of NRS 360880, which is otherwise known as the $1 billion investment abatement package. As a supplemental piece of that package in 2015, $38 million worth of transferable tax credits was also allocated. A company could apply for these if they met certain statutory criteria around job creation. They were specifically developed as part of the package to drive job creation. These are not funds, but they can be transferred for cash, or they can be used against a company's internal taxes. We do have specific parameters around the taxes they can be used for, and that falls under insurance premium taxes, gaming license fees, and also modified business taxes. To make a request for these transferable tax credits, a company submits its annual third-party audit to GOED. Whether they're actually applying or not, this audit must be submitted every fiscal year. But this is also used to determine a company's eligibility to make a request for these credits. For the purposes of this request, this third-party audit was conducted by Ide Bailey. As my colleague mentioned, that was submitted as part of the record. Post June 30, 2025, the transferable tax credit portion will sunset. The rest of the package will remain in statute until any further changes are made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe Senator Neal may have a question on this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I understand the growth in terms of employees and exceeding, but I guess, you know, the way I look at this is that we gave an abatement, which allowed this company to come in and then grow. So why is there a need to continue or give more of an abatement? Why can't they just grow on their own? Why can't they just say, all right, we got the little start that we needed, and now they can function on their own without more taxes being abated?
I was checking to see with both North and South, which one of us wanted to comment. Looks like Mel's going for it. Go ahead, Mel.
Thank you, Senator Neil. Melanie Sheldon for the record. I will have to be honest, this package came into statute in the 29th special session, which was before my time. I'm not really sure. I wasn't privy to the conversations, but I believe that this was drawn out as a particular component to be a specific targeted job creation engine.
Thank you for that. But there's nothing, from my understanding, that mandates that we continue the abatement. I mean, you can come and ask, but it doesn't say that it has to be given just because they exceeded the threshold. But either way, I have a second question. Do you, because I didn't see in the audit from E. Bailey, what have been the induced benefits or indirect benefits that we've received from Redwood related to this employee growth, right? We should see, I see the capital investment, but we should also see some other numbers associated with, you have, you know, sales tax and other things that we gained because of that investment. It's like do you have any additional information other than what's in this audit?
If I may, Chair?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thanks. Don Tatro with Redwood Materials. That's D-O-N and then T-A-T-R-O. So back kind of to the first question, I don't know if you recall the first time we came before IFC, the request from Go Ahead had been for the 7.6 maximum allotment for this time period. But based on our projections for the company, the committee said, sort of to summarize it, hey, we'll allow for your projected amount, which was the 2.1 million, and we hope to see you again if you meet those thresholds. And so that's what brings us before you here today. And then additionally, we paid over, in the last 2 years, $12.1 million in state and local taxes. So I hope that answers your question a bit. And since that time when we were sort of still working out of job trailers, we've really expanded our footprint. We've moved forward. We've recycled enough material for 1.6 billion smartphones or 250,000 EVs. We pay a median wage of $52 an hour, 78 to 82% of healthcare for employees, depending on which plan they cover. We've had over 1,600 construction jobs in those 2 years and invested over $530 million for the last fiscal year and projected to be over $100 million this year. So in the contract with the state, we have done all that we can to exceed and meet the expectations of our contract. And anyway, happy to answer any additional questions you may have. And I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. It did answer my question. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Additional questions or comments on item M? Up north? Not hearing any? All right, thank you very much. And with that, I'll accept a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd move to approve item M.
Thank you very much. Second from Senator Pizzina. And with that, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries, and thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And I will move on to item N. Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, you're back.
Yes, we're back. Charlie Donahue, D-O-N-O-H-U-E. I'm the administrator for the Division of State Lands. I also serve as a state land registrar. With me is the Deputy Administrator, Ellery Stoller. Before you today is a lease agreement between the state of Nevada, Division of State Lands, for and on behalf of the Department of Health and Human Services, and the Campus for Hope Foundation. It's my understanding that members of the committee may have some specific questions for the Campus of Hope team. There are a number of those folks present in the room, and if it's more appropriate, I would defer to them to answer some of your questions. But I just wanted to go over some of the basic tenets of the lease itself. And that is that, sorry, Ellery, I'm going to cozy up a little
Mr. Hafen, can I get you to shift? Assemblymember Hafen, can I, thank you. No, well, you don't have to shift that far, but we were sort of bobbing our heads back and forth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Some of the elements of the lease itself, this is an exceptional request. It's also an exceptional program that's being proposed to be utilizing 20 acres on the SNAMS campus adjacent to Charleston and Oakey and Jones. The provisions of the lease, it's a initial term of 49 years with 5 options, 10-year options to renew. Those options are based on the performance of the foundation, delivering what they are proposing to deliver, which is transitional housing and wraparound services for members in the community who might be experiencing a rather difficult time. The consideration is something that I, as the State Land Registrar, in conjunction with the Director of the Department of Health and Human Services, Director Whitley, have the ability to do under NRS 322.065. This provision in statute is not utilized that often, and the determination of what would be reasonable and responsible for the use of these 20 acres and eventually possibly 22.5 acres was that the consideration would be for 0. And this is building upon coming out of the 2023 session, AB 528, where the state was willing to put up $100 million or offer that to GoEd, and if it could be matched by $100 million, that for programs such as this, that it would be in the community's and the state's best interest to move forward with programs like this. So those are the general principles of the lease itself. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions associated with the lease itself. If you want to get into more and get into in-depth of the services that the foundation will be providing, there are members here who I would, respectfully ask this body to allow them to approach the chairs and engage in conversations with you.
All right, thank you very much for that overview. Speaker Yeager, did you have questions up north?
Thank you, Chair. I do not have any questions on this item.
Okay, thank you. Any questions down here in Las Vegas? Senator Neal. I think you can ask what you would like.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just had a question because during the legislative session, there were a lot of constituents that were concerned about this parcel. Was the department able to meet with them and explain to those citizens the value of what was being done, or are they still in deep objection?
Thank you for the question, Senator Charlie Donahue, Administrator for the Division of State Lands. I'm aware that there were comments from community members during session. While that was taking place, the agency did not specifically hold any workshops, but members of the broader team. When I classify that as a broader team, the members on the team were comprised of myself, Ellery Staller, members of the Campus for Hope Foundation, Jeremy Aguero, Kim Jeffries, Eric Hansen, and the other members of the team were going out and making inroads into the community and holding conversations And it's my understanding that they were also having conversations with members of the legislative body as well.
Follow-up, Madam Chair? So what was the outcome of the conversations? Are the constituents around the area still super angry, or are they good?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I'd really feel a little bit more comfortable kicking that to some of the Campus for Hope team members, because it's my understanding, I found out last evening as I was driving to dinner with my former DAG, that there had been a lawsuit filed regarding this matter. So to answer your question, I can't believe that everybody would be fully satisfied in the community, but I don't know the details of conversations with the outreach.
Okay, I didn't know about the lawsuit. Was it in the paper? Because I kept myself away from the paper for at least 10 days. Because there's special stuff in it. Can we hear about this lawsuit?
I believe Mr. Aguero is in the audience and he possibly can shed some light on this.
Madam Chair, for the record, Jeremy Aguero, Jeremyaguero. In response to Senator Neal's question, yes, there was a lawsuit that was filed by a couple of the residents in and around the area. Obviously, we only recently received that and are still evaluating that lawsuit, and we'll continue to review it in accordance with the normal process. Certainly taking all of those things seriously. In response to Senator Neal's question, projects like this magnitude are always going to have some residents that have concerns. We expect that to continue. We will continue to work with the residents in trying to find ways to mitigate any concerns relative to the Campus for Hope project, and also to help educate them relative to the project, as there have been a number of misunderstandings in terms of what the project is and what the project is not.
Thank you for the response. So we move forward with the lease, which is 49 years, and then it has 10-year renewal options for up to 99 years. What then places that lawsuit, I mean, because it's juxtaposed right now against the lawsuit that has been filed just recently. I mean, what are we contemplating and how to mitigate and manage that?
Madam Chair, if I may respond. Senator Neal, the lawsuit requests an injunction. So if there's an injunction that's put into place, the project wouldn't actually move forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Additional questions or comments? Senator Canizaro?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess that one of the things I wanted to sort of highlight, because I think first and foremost, the fact, I guess in my mind, Madam Chair, that there is a lawsuit is sort of separate and apart from what we have to consider here as a legislative body with respect to whether or not we are going to approve a lease for a project that we've been discussing at different IFC meetings. We have been discussing as a legislative body, that we have heard in a variety of money committee hearings throughout the last legislative session. And I know that several of us have had many meetings with individuals and the Campus of Hope folks who are doing this in other places to talk about what this really looks like. And I guess the biggest thing to me, and one of the things that I feel as though maybe overlooked in some of these conversations, is that this area where the lease is purported to cover already covers the things that are happening on that particular campus, already include Southern Nevada Mental Health Services, already include Ross and Neal, already include different adolescent intervention service buildings and other state agency pieces. So this land, if I'm understanding it, and you can certainly correct me if I am wrong,
Mr. Aguero or team, that those are the sorts of things that are already happening on this campus. And so to me, you know, putting in additional services onto this campus to help the kind of folks that are currently being helped in this same area seems to make a lot of sense. And the better utilization of our resources as a state to help Nevadans seems to be a good use of that, at least in my opinion. And so I just wanted to correct that, because I think that there's been a lot of conversation about this particular area, but as I understand the area where the lease is being covered, those are the sorts of activities that are already being facilitated on that campus.
Madam Chair, if I may, through you to the Senator, I would agree with that wholeheartedly, and I do believe that's one of the reasons why this piece of property, or a portion of this piece of property, was identified.
Madam Chair, I don't have anything to add. Majority Leader, that is the most accurate and comprehensive synopsis of exactly why we're talking about the site. It's about a promise fulfilled.
No, and I appreciate that. I saw the green light on your microphone, Mr. Gross. I thought you had some additional comments, but that was, I think, something that I wanted to make sure was part of our discussion here as we consider whether or not in this open public meeting to consider whether or not to approve a lease space that is consistent with a number of actions that this body and the legislative body as a whole has already taken, and seems to be consistent with the use that is currently ongoing at that same location. And so with that, Madam Chair, I just want to thank everybody for their hard work on this. I think that this is a good project, and I'll turn it back over to you for anybody else who has questions, but thank you for the time.
Thank you very much. Additional comments or questions on this particular item? All right, with that, I will accept a motion.
Madam Chair, I would move to approve item N.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Backus. A second from Senator Cannizzaro. Any discussion on this motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. With that, we will move on to item O.
Good morning, and it's great to say good morning, Chair Dondero Loop and Vice Chair Monroe Moreno, members of the committee. For the record, Steve Acroth, the Administrator of the Nevada Housing Division, providing an update on the Home Means Nevada initiative. You have probably in your possession the report with the slideshow that was going to originally be presented here. It was presented at the May interim meeting, so I'm going to spare you the rerun and just talk about where we are right now. And effectively, our spend rate is now at 48%, $240,815,000 total expended in the program. And with that, be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Are there any questions on item O, the Home Means Nevada initiative? Any up north? All right, with that, thank you very much. And I will accept a motion.
This is an info item.
Oh, sorry, this is an info item only. And Mr. Acroth, we're also happy that we could say good morning to you. So thank you very much for being here today. All right, with that, we will move to item P, and it is 4A.
Thank you again, Chair Dondera Loop, Vice Chair Monroe Moreno, members of the committee, Steve Acroth, Administrator of the Nevada Housing Division, providing the Windsor Park update. A lot's happened in the last quarter and a lot's happened fairly recently. And I just kind of want to touch base and state on the record, we had come before this committee, I believe at the April IFC, basically telling the committee that we anticipated the use of federal ARPA funds to be spent first for the project. So if the committee recalls, there's 37 million allocated to the project. 12 million of that is what's classified as state general funds, which expire on September 19th, 2025. As this committee has heard previously, the ARPA funds are deadline for expenditure is December 31st, 2026. We anticipated that the state general fund would be advanced. It was not. So those funds will expire on September 19th. We have had discussions with both LCB Fiscal and GFO, and we will be using those funds first to make sure they get out the door by the September 19th date. So those funds will be used for current expenditures that have not already been deemed by use for the ARPA funds. That will leave a balance of $985,063 to be spent by the September 19th date, and we anticipate that funding to be spent by that date. That was the main update we wanted to provide. Be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have. Thank you.
All right, with that, are there any questions, Senator Neal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just so we could put it out on the record, media was talking about SB 450 and the allocation by, I believe it was June. It's someday this month. But I just want you to put on the record that we have satisfied that requirement of the allocation related to it being allocated and then the spin down in September 19, 2025.
Thank you, Senator Neal. Steve Acroft for the record. That is in fact correct. When we exercised the agreement with the developer CDPCN, that basically obligated the entirety of the 37 million. So from a standpoint of what's written per SB 450, we've met that obligation deadline of, I believe it was June 30th.
Thank you for that. I know we ran into a setback this session, but we also know that we're going to be able to move forward with the project, and we are still going to need additional monies in order to complete the project in entirety. Is that correct?
Steve Acroft for the record. Effectively, yes. We need to know exactly how many homes were being transferred, but if it is up to 93 and we anticipate that it will be close to that number, additional funding will be necessary at some point in time for the completion of the project.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions on this particular item? All right, with that, I will accept this is informational only as well, which means we will move on to the last item on our agenda, which is public comment. So I will start here in Las Vegas, public comment. Seeing no one, I will go to Carson City. Seeing no one, I will go to the phone lines. AVH, when you are ready.
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working, but there are no callers to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you very much. And with that, before we close today, I would just like to close in honor of the Reno Sparks Indian Colonies Chair for over 32 years. Chair Melendez passed away yesterday. And so with that, if we could just have a moment of silence before we close. Thank you very much. And with that, we will close our meeting today in his memory, and we are adjourned. And we will have grab and go lunch for you.